I'm Catherine Tomlinson and I started an eco-conscious pottery company called Oxford Clay. So I don't just make pottery, I make resources for other potters wanting to be more eco-friendly in their pottery practice. And that's what this podcast is all about. It's about sharing everything I've learned along my eco-conscious pottery journey with you. And I'm so glad you're here with me. Let's go. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Oxford Clay Pottery Podcast. I'm Catherine and today we're going to be talking about sources of pottery glaze recipes. Because you might be like, okay, maybe I want to try making my own pottery glaze. Where on earth do I find a pottery glaze recipe? So a lot of pottery glaze recipes are actually very simple, but it's really good to have a recipe because you want to know the right ratios of like different rocks, powdered rocks, different ingredients, different clays perhaps, to put into your pottery glaze to make, the glaze like how you want it, like nice and shiny or, so it's really important. Like it is important to use a recipe at first because then, you can kind of get the glaze you want basically. So in this episode, we'll talk about 7 sources of glaze recipes that I've used, and there are loads of sources out there. And so let's talk about 7, and so you know exactly where you can find pottery glaze recipes. Okay, so the first source, perhaps the most obvious, is pottery books. And what I found is that although there are some like really fantastic, modern books on pottery glaze recipes, some of the sort of classic pottery glaze recipe books from the kind of 1960s, 1970s, they often use kind of more like natural, more basic ingredients. So, if you're looking for like a more natural glaze, those, but older books maybe from the 60s and 70s, they tended towards kind of like, using rocks that were available then, quartz, flint, ball clays, and plant ashes as well. So a lot of those books would use those kind of ingredients. Whereas glaze recipe books now, they'll often have like a base glaze recipe, which is fantastic, and then they often have like lots of different kind of metal oxides that'll show you how to use different metal oxides for colouring, for example. So Linda Bloomfield actually has a few really fantastic books on making your own glazes and just like colouring them. She's got a fantastic book on colouring, and it sort of goes through every single colour, that every single metal oxide makes, and it's really fantastic if that's kind of pottery that you make. So just important to say as well, some of the ingredients that older books used are kind of no longer used now because they might be poisonous. So if you find some ingredients in a book you're not quite sure, you can do a quick like Google search and just to see if that ingredient, you probably won't be able to necessarily buy it that much, or it will have a warning from the pottery suppliers if it's a kind of poisonous ingredient. Say for example some like lead based ingredients, they would leach, say like at low temperatures, like earthenware temperatures and stuff. So it's not always like following those older recipes exactly. You might be able to switch out an ingredient basically. Okay, so books, that's one fantastic source. Oh yes, if you wanted some like recipes that were from very simple ingredients that are very available now and fully safe, non-toxic, I've got 17 recipes actually in eco-conscious pottery glazing. That book, which you can get on the Oxford Clay website, and on Amazon as well if you want a paper copy. So and I've also got a book actually on plant ash glazing, which uses just like one recipe, and that's pottery glazing with plant ash. If you're interested in making glazes, making ash glazes, that's got a great recipe in. Okay, so where else can you find glaze recipes? Okay, so the second source I found are actually articles. So there's a kind of ceramics periodical called Ceramic Review, which they quite often used to print like people say like they did a kind of feature. I read one once on the potter who uses raw glazing a lot, called Stephen Hill, and at the bottom of this article had this was like Stephen Hill's recipe for raw glazing, stoneware pottery, and it had like a glaze recipe for that. So I actually found that via a Google search. It was just like a PDF of the original article. But you might have a library service which allows you to like look back through copies of Ceramic Review, or there might be other pottery journals that might have glaze recipes in. So quite often they used to print the glaze recipes, which is so cool. So yeah, that is another source. So you could do a quick Google, maybe Google Scholar or Google search, and you can find those articles with glaze recipes in. Okay, so the third source I want to talk to you about is this amazing website called glazy.org, and I think glazy.org is absolutely incredible. So the idea of glazy.org is basically potters from all over the world will write down their glaze recipe, test it on a piece of pottery, and then they will take a photo of it and they'll upload it to glazy.org, and it's just an amazing database basically of glazes. Like thousands of potters have made all these different glazes, and it's so cool. So you can actually also do a kind of search as well. So you can search via the temperature you want to fire at, you can search for the color glaze you want. It's just amazing. So you can do a keyword search. So I did a search for ash glazes, and I found this like really lovely recipe that I now basically use in my pottery the whole time, which is in that that ash glazing book. It's that recipe that I use in that book. I found that on Glazy, so it's such a good resource for potters. So I would thoroughly recommend Glazy. It's totally free. You can just browse on it. I browsed on it for quite a long time to find that recipe. It was just great. So okay, so the next source of glaze recipes that I've seen are actually YouTube videos. So, the YouTube videos, you might be like browsing YouTube, that's maybe where you're seeing this video, or if you're listening to the podcast, I've seen YouTube videos where people have been like, okay, this is how I'm making this glaze, and then they've put the recipe below in the kind of show notes of the YouTube video. So that is definitely like a source of glaze recipes. You can so YouTube is like a search engine, so you can search in the YouTube search bar and to find maybe like a video of someone like making a glaze, or you put like glaze recipe as a keyword sort of thing, and you can find videos with perhaps a glaze recipe below. Okay, so the next source of glaze recipes is actually potters' notebooks. Now this might sound a bit random, but many potters would keep like meticulous notes of their trials, and sometimes these are actually published and or perhaps in a museum. So there's this really amazing potter who practiced along about the same time as like Bernard Leach was practicing, called Catherine Pleydell-Bouverie, and she was people say that Catherine Pleydell-Bouverie was basically the number one source of glaze making knowledge about ash glazes. So she actually tested hundreds of different plants making ash glazes. And it's really cool. I found this book in the library the other day, which was like, it was all about Catherine Pleydell-Bouverie's life, and it had like all these letters which her and Bernard Leach had like written to each other, and she had this like nickname for him, and he would sort of sometimes ask her for advice on ash glazing, and I think she also helped him write a section of his book, the ash glazing section. So she knew so much about ash glazing, and she actually kept meticulous notes of all her glaze tests. And it's amazing. She would write the glaze recipe, and then she would write, what she thought of the glaze. So you're like, oh, not very attractive, I won't do it again. Or like, yeah, this was lovely, great glaze sort of thing. So you can actually obtain a sort of PDF copy of Catherine Playdell Bouvery's glaze notebooks. They're actually held in the Craft Study Centre in Surrey, and I'm not sure if they have them actually as an exhibit, out for the public, but I asked very nicely, please could I have a look at her notebooks, and they actually had a digital resource of them that they said I could use for my own use. And yeah, so that was amazing. They're like her handwritten notebooks, the digitisation of them. So what an incredible part of history, available to us now. It's just incredible. So that was okay. So that's number 5, and then number 6. Okay, number 6. I've put another search engine as number 6, which is Pinterest. So I've seen loads of recipes on Pinterest. So again, it's a search engine just like YouTube. You can just search Pinterest, glaze recipes, and then loads of recipes will come up. So I've gone to mainly glazy for my recipes, and that's just because I was, I could search by like high fire, and I could search by ash glazing. But Pinterest, if you're kind of like just browsing recipes and stuff, Pinterest is a great resource as well. Okay, and then the final source of glaze recipes is like your own experiments, basically, in glaze making. So once you've found a basic recipe, you could try switching out different ingredients for other ingredients. So, for example, if you have a recipe that needs talc, you could try switching that for dolomite. So they're very similar. You can switch those two. Or if you have a recipe that asks for china clay, you can switch that out with ball clay, or you can switch, a certain china clay, say like EPK china clay, with Grolleg, which is from Southwest England. So you can try switching different ingredients. So generally speaking, quartz and flint are kind of interchangeable. Cornish stone is also a type of quartz, although Cornish stone is partially processed. It's like slightly degraded quartz. So where it calls for Cornish stone is a good idea to use Cornish stone, but just know that chemically it's quite similar to quartz. It's made from quartz rock. So quartz, Cornish stone and flint are very similar. So you can try experimenting with, switching those ingredients and just seeing what effect it has on your glaze. Especially you get a very simple base glaze recipe. So a lot of the glazes, for example, in Eco-Conscious Pottery Glazing, this book by Oxford Clay, available on the Oxford Clay website, they're very, very simple recipes. So quite often they'll just have like 3 ingredients, 4 ingredients. It'll be like feldspar, quartz, whiting, and then a wood ash or something, or a plant ash. Another one, feldspar, plant ash, quartz and china clay. So again, you can just kind of switch out one of those ingredients. You could try putting a little bit more plant ash in, a little bit less plant ash in, more feldspar, less feldspar. They're all kind of safe, sort of like to play around with in terms of like, the balance of like shininess and and what it looks like. So just in terms of the ratios. So so much fun to be had in terms of like just the kind of like tweaking your recipes, getting it how you like. So so many places to find glaze recipes. If you're just looking for, say like if you just were like, oh, just give me one top tip, where should I go and get a glaze recipe? I would say probably glazy.org, because it's very easy to search on it. You don't have to go and like get a book out the library or search for a book or anything like that. You literally can just look it up on Google. I'll put the website actually for glazy.org just below in the show notes, and then you can see what the web address is and stuff. But that's it's just so good because a lot of the recipes they're tried and tested recipes by potters for potters. So fantastic source there. So oh gosh, happy potting with glaze recipes, and really looking forward to seeing you on the next episode. Okay, bye. So if you enjoyed that and you're interested to learn more about eco-conscious pottery, head over to the Oxford Clay website, which is www.oxfordclay.co.uk. I can't wait to see you there.